Welcome back to Chapter Chats. In today's episode, we are diving into Chapter 5 of Chuck's book, the 5th edition of ISD from the Ground Up, a no-nonsense approach to instructional design. This chapter is titled Learning Design. It focuses on the critical design phase of the ISD process. We're going to be exploring the key steps and functions of design, the connection between design and project management, and how to craft strong objectives that align with a comprehensive design plan. Chuck, I love talking about design. I think this is my favorite part of the process of ISD. It really is. I really love it. So let's just dive into question 1 that I have for you. All right. So design is a critical step in the ISD process, as you outlined in this chapter. How would you describe the process of design and its primary functions, especially for somebody who may be new to the field?
Well, design is design. It's instructional design. It's learning design. And its whole notion of this is where it all happens. This is the control center. This is the epicenter. It is the place where all the decisions are made. This is where everything is laid out, whether you're doing project management or whatever you happen to do in process. It's this whole idea of this is where you design the learning. So you write the objectives, you look at evaluation tasks, you determine how you're going to do mastery. You start to think about, okay, where do I need to plug in subject matter experts? Where do I need to do materials development? Do I need to produce a video? Do I do a slide deck? All these things take place in design. And in the ADDIE model, analysis, design, okay, well, you're always in design. You never leave design. This is the encompassing portion of this. And that's why people that think ADDIE is linear are really going to fall off the end of that, because it's not the way it is. You're always in design, even when you're in analysis, even when you're in development, even when you're in implementation, and even when you're in evaluation. You are in instructional design, performing design.
Yeah. Oof. Design and project management, they often overlap in instructional design work, right? So how would you describe their relationship, and why is project management essential to the design process?
Well, you find that the higher you get up in a hierarchy of instructional design, so a lot of us start out doing courses for ourselves. We want to be able to teach these things and work that way. But then as you mature into this, many times you'll find that these become very complicated projects. And project management allows you to put these things together, put them in a chronological order, look at all the resources you need, think about timing. Okay, what are you going to have deadlines for things? Who's going to be assigned to it? Who's responsible for it? Those are all upper level kind of design skills that you may or may not get to, but it's not a bad idea to put this in your repertoire. And even if you're doing it for yourself, which is equally important, there's no more or less important part of instructional design, you still want to have deadlines. You still want to have lists of things you need to do. And you're always going to have that. And if you do it all yourself, that's terrific. But I'm telling you, if you don't have a list and a checklist and deadlines and all these other things, it's going to fall off the cliff at some point.
And that's why I like design so much. I love checklists, tasks.
Yes, you do.
Schedules. I thrive on them.
As I know.
We stay on top of things, though, don't we, Chuck?
Yes, we do, Denise.
I digress. My next question for you: in design, creating a design plan is a detailed process, which, clearly I love. Can you share the key elements that make up a strong design plan and why each is important in this process?
Yeah, design plans. So as you look at the book and look at the example, there's an example of a design plan in there. And these are, sometimes you might think of it as executive summary. You might think of it as a blueprint. You can think of it any way you want to. But it really allows you to think about all the things that are important for your project. And this is before you ever really get going on your project. Many times you do design plans well before you do any work other than this. And one thing I found is that clients, funders, boards, the government, if you're working on a grant, they really like these things because they got everything they want in there. And what I found is most of the time, they don't read past the rationale, which is usually your first element in a design plan. Why am I doing this? Who does it touch? What's it going to look like when I'm done? All those things go into your rationale. Then you need to think about objectives. You think about evaluation tasks. You think about all these other things that go with your project. And some of the things that people don't think about, especially if they're not involved in this in a way that we are, is they don't think about prerequisites. And you may think about learner prerequisites, but one thing I found that almost nobody talks about is facilitator prerequisites. Who do you want teaching this course? Because if you just allow anyone to teach it, you don't set up any real significant guidelines about what kind of background and knowledge and other things people need to teach, then sometimes that's where your course or your program falls apart. You don't have the right people teaching it. And so these are design plan elements. And there's others in there. And as you look, there's 8 or 9. You can put in as many as you want to. But the point is, this is your blueprint for what you do. This is the product that you will give most funders, clients, boards, etc. This is the documentation of what you say you're going to do and how you're going to do it. And here are the details on the things that go into this. So I would recommend, even if you never show it to somebody, always do a design plan, even if it's on the back of a napkin or an envelope, and you're doing the project for yourself. Still go through the exercise of thinking about all these things.
Indeed. Writing terminal and enabling objectives is the cornerstone of design. Could you walk us through how to craft these objectives effectively and how they align with the overall design plan?
Yeah, so I want to think about terminal and enabling. So one thing I found in the medical field, I don't use the word terminal anymore. I don't call them terminal objectives. I call them, outcome. I don't know even what I call them anymore. But so that's another part of ISD that we all kind of have to watch is our in-house vocabulary and jargon of things. But terminal objective, we'll use that term for now. So terminal is what is the sum of what they do within this learning environment? What are the things they're going to be able to leave with? So this can be a list, this can be bullets, this can be whatever. What am I going to give them? What behaviors do I expect? And how am I going to measure the mastery? So behavior, condition, degree. And when you think about enabling objectives, those are the pieces that go to your terminal objective. So it's going to take 5 different objectives to get me to my terminal objective, or it's going to take 10 different objectives to get me to my terminal objective. And I remember one program I did, it was 78 pages of objectives. So hundreds of terminal objectives, thousands of enabling objectives. So when you look at this as you're first starting out, you think, well, I only need to write 2 or 3 of these. Okay, good luck. You may get by with that. Maybe that's all you need. But there are times as you work deeper into this profession where you will spend a whole lot of time on objectives. And everybody struggles with objectives. I still struggle with objectives. I'm going to be honest with you. There are times that I have to think about it and make sure I'm not talking about a goal. That's the first thing. Objectives are not goals. Goals are general kind of things that you want to happen. Objectives are very specific things that you can observe and measure. So you kind of go through that exercise when you're first starting out. And you just need to think, okay, as they're leaving this room or as they're signing off online in your online section, or if they're looking at your micro learning, or they're looking at something else that you've done, what do they carry away from that? What will they move on in their life with? What has gone to long-term memory if you want to get into cognition? These are important things. And this is where you can really tell professional designers from the rest of the world. Because I can look at an objective and I won't get 2 words into it. And I know that either a professional designer has written it or someone who had no real experience in this wrote that. And there's probably nothing more important in the world of instructional design and objectives. This is really where it all happens. It all builds around this. What do you want them to accomplish? What do you want them to be able to do? And to what level of specificity do I need to go to be able to reflect that?
Indeed. It's my favorite part of the design process is writing these objectives. And I love with Train the Trainer programs, I absolutely love teaching this part because it's just fun to see the light bulb moments go off in the learners. They use the word understand and learn. And anybody who has been watching this channel, who knows Chuck, You never use those words when you're doing objectives because can you measure it? Can you observe it? You really can't observe or learn, or you can't observe or measure if someone has learned something or understands something. So it's all those action verbs that just, I don't know. I enjoy digging up
No,
action verbs.
I like them too. But as I've said, I'll be honest with you, sometimes I struggle with them too. And what you find is if you struggle with an objective, it means that you don't have enough information usually. You don't know specifically, or you can't define a behavior. And sometimes this is where you plug in subject matter experts or do what you need to do, and that's fine. But to say that I don't occasionally say, well, I want them to understand this. Well, okay, but I can't write that because I have to find myself and give myself a stern talking to if I use understand. So I fully appreciate how people get there, but we got to do better and we can do it.
My last question for this chapter 5 chapter chat. When preparing deliverables like course descriptions, prerequisites, and facilitator guides, what advice would you give to ensure that these materials are both comprehensive and also engaging?
Well, one of the things, obviously, besides your experience that you have and the people that work with you, if you're working by yourself, you're working in a team, whatever. But I always have someone else look at my work. Usually an experienced designer, if I can, even if it's a client or whatever. And also, I like to have learners look at my work. Does this make sense to you? Is this where you think you should be going? And I found that there has not been a single time that I haven't learned something by getting someone else's opinion. Now, I don't always listen to it because maybe they don't know what they're talking about. But I do go through the process of getting feedback on things because the worst thing you can do as a designer is work in a vacuum. You will miss so much. It's like doing something that you're going to teach. If your mentality is you're designing for you to teach, you're going to have at best 2/3 of what you need to have in there. That's just the reality of it. So getting this feedback, getting this reflection from others, sometimes putting things down for a day and picking it up the next day is really useful too. Things will jump out at you. And Denise, you and I as authors, that's what we do many times, is we'll write something and we'll put it down, pick it up in a couple of days, and we'll go back and look at it. Think, oh, I can word that better. It's not really saying what I wanted to say. Same thing with design, with your design plan and all the elements. So your course descriptions, your objectives, your rationale, all of those things, get somebody else's eye on it if you can. And I think you'll really benefit from that.
Yeah. Thanks, Chuck, for these great answers, for helping to shed light on this wonderful process of the design process within ISD. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in.